We're going to be talking a little bit later to Cathy Banks. She's a travel expert. As far as a couple of questions here. Should the airlines have a too fat to fly rule? How big is too big? And once you buy a ticket and board the plane, should flight attendants be put in a position to be, I guess you could call the pound police? One of the stories over the weekend caught my attention. Quinton Aaron, the star of the Oscar-nominated film The Blind Side, forced off a US Airways flight Friday because he couldn't fit into his seat. We're talking 6'8", 500-pound Quinton Aaron. Big boy, to say the least. Joining us right now is Cathy Banks, a travel expert. Cathy, good morning.
Good morning.
All right, so 6'8", 500 pounds. That's pretty big. Should this have been handled differently, though? Should this have gotten to the point of he's on the plane, he's embarrassed, he's asked to leave? How can it avoid getting to that point, number one? And should the airlines have a too fat to fly rule?
Well, to me, it sounds like this situation was handled just fine. The only reason we're hearing about it is because he's an actor and whatnot. But if you actually delve into it, it sounds like he always buys two seats. It's just that he couldn't on this flight. And so the airline put him on the next flight, and he had two seats. He was happier. He acknowledges he needs two seats. He generally buys two seats. And he even says it worked out better for him to be on the next flight. So it sounded to me in this case that it was handled appropriately.
But once you buy a ticket and you board the plane, should flight attendants be put in a position to be, in essence, the pound police?
Well, probably it should have been handled in the gate, and maybe he shouldn't have even tried to be in one seat, talking about a personal responsibility situation. But if you review the passenger size policies across all the airlines, they do ask passengers to, if you need two seats, go ahead and buy two seats in advance.
We're talking to Cathy Banks, a travel expert. What about from Quinton Aaron's standpoint? If you're an individual who's 6'8", 500 pounds, do you have any rights? Does an obese passenger have any rights? Could he have said, no, I'm not getting off the plane?
No. Really, anyone can be asked to get off the plane. You don't have a right to be on the plane. It's a privilege, and you can be asked to get off the plane for many reasons.
Yeah, but if I bought my ticket and just because I'm a big boy, I would think that I would have some sort of legal standing. I'm not going to make the plane crash, for the love of God. So if I have my seat and I paid money like anybody else, why should I be forced off?
Well, but you just said it. You bought your seat. You haven't bought the seat next to you. Somebody else did, and they're trying to sit in it.
What if I squeeze myself into one?
If you can squeeze yourself into one and lower the armrest, you have no argument.
Well, as a travel expert, what kind of advice do you give people? Do you ever get asked, by individuals who may be obese or individuals who might find themselves in a situation as far as any kind of advice how to deal with something like this?
Well, the airlines recently disallowed the seatbelt extenders that passengers can bring on.
Yeah.
Like if they provide them, some don't, and there's no guarantee they're going to be available. So you really do have to kind of be honest with yourself in advance. Do I need to buy two seats? Now, some airlines have a policy that if you get on the flight and there were empty seats on every leg of your flight, you can go back and request a refund for your second seat. Not all airlines have that policy, and I can't imagine trying to get an airline to admit that, yes, there really were empty seats. Sounds like a pain to me. But I think it's important to just be honest up front and do what needs to be done.
Talking to travel expert Cathy Banks. What about, have airlines made any adjustments as far as building bigger seats? In the newer planes, are they taking into account the fact that Americans are getting larger? We've seen some movie theater chains who've built bigger seats. Have the airlines addressed this in any way?
Really not. If anything, the trend is the other direction. Anyone who's flown in the last, 10 years can tell you that it seems like seats are getting narrower and narrower. Now, some airlines are offering sections in economy where you have more leg room, and there's at least one airline, maybe it's United, that has slightly wider seats up front. But the trend, if you're going to charge extra for seats, is for more legroom rather than a wider seat.
That doesn't make
unless you do first class.
Yeah, and that doesn't make a whole lot of sense that the airlines are making their seats smaller while our rear ends are getting bigger.
They definitely are.
It doesn't make much sense. Hey, Cathy, thanks for joining me. Thanks for the insight.
Sure.